Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to the Apps Events Admin webinar. We're very excited to be here today. Joining me today is Charlie Love from way up north in the UK, and Peter Horner. Thank you, guys. How are you both doing today?
Yeah, doing fine, James. Yeah, looking forward to today. Got a few nice, interesting things to share with folks. Peter, how are you getting on?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Yeah, it's a bit cooler now in England, so that's a big relief. But yeah, looking forward to getting stuck into this topic. It's an interesting one.
Fantastic. And of course, this is the first admin summit after everybody or most people's summer holidays. There are, in fact, schools in Asia where I'm based, there's countries in Asia which do not have a summer now. So they have different calendars. So if you're in the middle of your year, well, I hope your year is going very well. For everybody else who's just finished their summer, yeah, as Charlie was about to say, we've got some really interesting topics talking about security best practice. So if you're going back to school now, this is going to be very relevant to you. Before we get on to that, I just want to say a massive thank you to ASA for supporting and sponsoring these webinars. Every month, of course, we run an admin webinar and we run a teachers online summit as well. It's very exciting to be collaborating with ASA on this. Okay, before we get started with the admin topics from Charlie and Peter, just a quick shout out that we have launched our new online learning platform. And to get to that, you go to learn.appsevents.com. It's very exciting because last week, we actually haven't really formally announced it. We've posted it in a couple of places, but last week we had nearly 1,000 signups for our courses, which are online, which is great news. And people are very excited and were sharing out on Twitter and so on their different certificates that they earned. We have educator courses and we have basic admin courses there as well. And a quick screenshot of that, we can see here we have the Google Slides intro, Google Sheets intro, and then there's a quick screenshot of the different admin courses we have as well. In the future, we've got a lot more content coming to this platform, so it's very exciting. Again, I'll just go back to that, learn.appsevents.com. That's the place to go to check out all of this online content. We're very excited to be building this out over the next few months. Okay, so we had a quick hello from Charlie and Peter. I think unfortunately Veronica couldn't make it today, so it's just the three of us. We'll hopefully get Veronica back on the next one. For those of you who don't know the three of us, I'm James. I'm based in Asia. I've been with Apps Events part-time and then full-time for nearly 10 years. I was an IT administrator and now I'm full-time with Apps Events. I have done administration training, and I now do a lot of technical rollouts for different Google products. Maybe Charlie, just a few words from you in introduction, please.
Yeah, sure. So my history is I work in the edtech sector. I support our school district in the north of Scotland. We've got about 24,500 students and manage a fleet of about 20,000 Chromebooks. So it's all a pretty large deployment, and it comes with all the various administration that goes with that. And I've got also a kind of development background as well. So I make cool stuff with code and things as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm an IT manager at one of the largest sixth form colleges in the UK. We've got about 4,500 full-time students, and we've been a Google college, a Google reference college for many years now. Got many Chromebooks, and yeah, a bit like Charlie, I do a lot of coding, and I like making cool stuff.
Yes, and both Charlie and Peter, they're very humble about this, but they've developed a number of different, let's say, apps and integrations in the background, some of which you may have seen before, and some of which sort of hidden in the background, but they're doing a lot of exciting stuff. So looking forward to hear more about that in the future. Okay, again, just a quick shout out, Ronnie, as we were saying before, learn.appsevents.com. Rania in the comments just said that she's finished her courses already. Thank you, Rania, and thank you for everybody who's participated in those. It's great to see all of your positive feedback. Okay, so quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. So Charlie, would you mind to maybe share with us a bit more of an in-depth summary of what we're going to be looking at?
Yeah, so I think just this morning we're going to have a look at today we're going to have a look at just what are the kind of key things that you need to do as an admin to make sure your accounts are safe and secure, and you kind of following the kind of best practice. Because what I've discovered just through a lot of support I do for schools is that the kind of Google Workspace deployment, sometimes it kind of grows organically. They start small, they get bigger and bigger, and as they change and develop, they kind of get set up really quickly to get started without considering some of the security best practices that they should be following. And then they get to a position where they've got to kind of go back and implement many of the things that we're going to talk about just now. And actually, many of the people that I support through apps events and through calls and stuff, many of them actually don't have this stuff in place. So they haven't gone through the kind of security best practices and set up those accounts. So today what we want to do is kind of just go into some of the kind of key issues for folks to consider, and just sort of let them know these are the setup things that you can do to ensure that your Google Workspace domain is secure and that your data is protected and your admin accounts are safe there.
And it's a great topic, Charlie, because I remember back in the early days of Google, or Google for Education, the admin console had a limited number of security controls. It's really, really very limited. And even myself, I could figure out all of the security controls. I was very confident that we were as secure as could be, but it's changed so much in the last few years, and especially in the last couple of years. If you're on Workspace Education Plus, for example, you have access to the investigation tool, the security dashboard, and so on. So there's been a lot of changes. Peter, have you got any tips maybe for people if they want to keep up to date with all the security changes? How do you keep, well, Peter, I know you've got an inside line to Google, but how would you recommend people keep up to date with all the security changes that come up?
Well, in terms of Google updates in general, I subscribe to their update blog. So I've linked it up with our Google chat actually. So we've got a chat space where we automatically get pinged a message every time there's a new Google update. Or you can just go onto their blog and read on there. And Google also have some really helpful articles, and I'll try and find some of the links to those and drop them into the chat in a minute, kind of covering some of this stuff as well.
Yeah, exactly. The Workspace updates blog, and you can actually filter for admin changes as well, can't you? So
That's right.
Actually a little drop down. You can filter for admin, and you can see those updates. Great. So let's get started. I think Charlie, back to you.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that I kind of discovered. Various things that I've kind of discovered in some kind of security best practices as we go through. And I kind of think the first one's a kind of easy one to start with, right? Because if because you're running Google Workspace, you want to know who's making changes in your admin console. You want to know what the activity is to be able to track the activity and audit the activity that's happening. You can't do that if you're sharing admin accounts, right? But I have come across people sharing admin accounts for specific, for general use. So just a admin or super admin between 3 or 4 techs that are using that particular account. So it's really important, I think, to make sure that your admin accounts are unique and identifiable based on the activity you're going to be doing and who's going to be using those accounts. Peter, I guess that's something you've got in place, yeah?
Absolutely, and I think it's a good one to have at the top of the list because administrators, super admins have an awful lot of power. In theory, a super admin can read every email or file on a Google Workspace domain. So those accounts need to be tracked and audited and controlled really tightly. Just like in Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So, we need to look after these accounts.
Peter, just thinking, do you have do you kind of have what would it be, a kind of naming set of rules for admin accounts that distinguish them from kind of more operational daily use accounts? Something you've got in place?
No, don't actually. We just keep them in a different OU. They are named differently from our normal staff accounts. They'd use the administrator's full name. So that's all we're doing. Is we're just keeping it in a separate OU to make them easier to identify.
Yeah, that's a great approach as well. I know that one of the things that I kind of speak to folks about is it's identify that admin, it's a super admin account, so say admin and then that person's name, or come up with some sort of naming convention that will distinguish those super admin accounts. And then that's something you can stick to consistently as staff come in and staff go. So, but it's, keeping them in an OU again, it's just making sure you got that separation so you can identify those are my super admins and those are my general users. So this is another point. The second bullet point, this is really, really interesting because I came across a school recently where their administrator had recently left, and they had removed and deleted the account for the administrator, and suddenly all of their processes that they'd set up stopped working. So their Google Cloud Directory sync, their password sync from Active Directory, all of that had stopped because the admin's main account, the account they just removed, was being used to sync all of those settings. So they run into a bit of a problem there. So I guess what I'm suggesting here is if you have a specific process that depends on an account, create specific accounts for those processes. Again, sticking with that rule of being able to identify which account does what. So I thought that was a useful one to share. So
that's a very good point, Charlie. So would you recommend something like sync@domain.com, for example, or syncadmin@domain.com to be used as an example account to be used for all of those?
Well, I think it's a good one to create something like that, James. Having an account that is dedicated to that task. So I think it's a good one to make. Yeah. Okay. Your admin accounts, as Peter's already said, your admin accounts they have a lot of privileges. I mean, they could actually delete your domain, if right? That's possible. Yeah. So there's an awful lot of power there, and we know that there's a lot of bad actors out there. Our systems are constantly under attack. Folks are looking to access our mail for spam, to steal our processing power, to gather personal data and harvest that, to look for information. So we know that our accounts are under lots of threat, and admin accounts are particularly good targets for bad actors. So one of the things that we really should do is implement that two-factor authentication to protect your admin accounts for sure. You may, that depending on your use case and your setting, your organization's business and such, it will depend on how appropriate two-factor authentication is for your general users. In an education context, you probably won't want to do that for students. You might want to do it for staff. But you certainly want to implement two-factor authentication for your administrator accounts because they have such power. And Peter, that's something you've rolled out. How did you find that with your admin team in terms of rolling out two-factor authentication?
Yeah, so it's so easy to set up now, isn't it? When I set this up, I did it for our admins first, and then we rolled it out to all of our staff. So it's so easy to set up, and it really makes our accounts a lot safer. And there's a bunch of options for using the second factor, which we'll talk about in a minute, and the different kind of levels of security there. But yeah, super easy to set up, and definitely the best way of protecting your credentials from phishing attacks or brute force kind of password guessing attacks.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just having that little bit of additional security really does help and protect those accounts. This is an interesting one. This you don't use your admin accounts for kind of general daily use, right? And this is one that I come across frequently when folks have maybe had Google Workspace for quite a long time, hadn't really addressed the security issues around their accounts, and have basically the super admin uses their normal account for super admin jobs. They use it to send their mail. They use it to run their calendar. And you really don't want to do that. You want to be able to distinguish between super admin activities and have an account that's dedicated to that, and your daily activities. Again, reduce the threat, reduce the possible risk of your daily operations somehow revealing your credentials or your security, compromising security, and then your admin console is compromised because of that. Any
It's
other
tough,
reasons
isn't
for
it?
that? Yeah.
Because it's so convenient, isn't it? Just I got to sign in just with one account. You can do it all from there. But yeah, like you say, it really isn't the most secure way of doing that. And it's good to, like we said earlier, to keep a separate super admin account. Makes it easier to track in audit logs. And yeah, it's definitely the way to go. And I'd also say, kind of linking into this, when setting up accounts, that's normally done through a sync tool, isn't it? So we might be syncing our staff accounts from our local directory. But also, I think it's a good idea to have our super admin accounts created directly in Google, not synced with any passwords and on another directory, just in case there is a problem further down the line and you don't want to lock yourself out of your account. Then should that sync tool break and mess up everyone's password? And it could happen. It's fairly unlikely, but it's a good idea to just keep that separate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think there's just so much additional risk, right? So, you don't want to be kind of signed in and browsing the web on your super admin account when you could be using a standard account for that. You want to kind of just keep that bit of separation between the two things. Yeah, absolutely.
Something else there, I mean, talk about browsing the web, you might want to try out a new extension, and extensions ask for certain privileges when they install. You might want access to your Google Drive, and as a super admin, of course, you've got a lot more privileges to give away. So definitely worthwhile keeping that separate.
Yeah, absolutely. Just other things, if you've got these separate accounts and maybe you're not doing administrative tasks as often as you might think you might be, what you can do is you can add a second email address for the billing and admin notifications. So the notifications you get from the admin console, you can add different email addresses to that. So you can direct those notifications to your operational, let's call it your daily use account, if you want to. So you don't have to be signed in as a super admin to get those notifications. You can still get them that way. Least privilege approach. Peter, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So you've got super admins, right? Super admins can do absolutely everything on a Google Workspace domain, but you might have a help desk team who are just responsible for, resetting user passwords, updating basic user information. In that case, there is a help desk role you can assign. But if that doesn't quite fit what you want to do, you can make your own custom roles as well. So ones I've made in the past, I've made a migration role to allow staff members to migrate content from their drive to a shared drive. Or we've got an enrollment account and role to allow those users to enroll pre-books onto our domain. So yeah, there's lots of different roles you can dish out. Another example, you may want different people to have access to something like the Vault tool on Google, but not the rest of the admin console. So then again, just set up a custom role for that and be very accurate in the privileges you're dishing out to people.
Yeah, absolutely, because you don't want to give away too much power, right? So you want to just keep your roles, admin roles, specific to the task that folks are going to do. Yeah, so absolutely right, Peter. And actually, when you do that, the roles that are already in the admin console are pretty good. Sometimes you got to do bits of tweaking to add one or two privileges, you say, but yeah, they're pretty good in terms of how they're set up. So this last point is from, I suppose, if everything goes wrong. So as administrators, if you find yourself in an absolutely dreadful position where all of, you can't, there's no other super admin that you can access, all of the information, you can't access anything else to get into your account for whatever reason, there are actually admin account recovery options, and there's information that you can gather that you need to recover admin accounts through support. So this is one of those things that folks always say, I'd wish I'd done that before it happened, right? So I do recommend that you look at the support article around admin recovery accounts and look at the information that's required as part of that, and just get that information and keep it somewhere safe. Keep it somewhere offline that you can access, just in case the very worst happens, and for whatever reason you can't access your super admin account. There's no other super admin available. Maybe it's some sort of horrendous hack attack or whatever that you experienced. Get those admin recovery that admin recovery information and keep it somewhere secure, because it means that you'll be able to recover those accounts even in the worst case, when you're you're locked out of your domain. Okay, so let's have a look at. So we spoke there about two-factor authentication or second-factor authentication to protect your accounts. Let's have a look at the options and chat those through.
Actually, just before we get onto that, Charlie, I had a couple of questions. So I managed a domain with less than 2,000 users. So we had a handful of admins. I'm just curious. I think we had 3 to 4 admins. We had 2 super admins. We had a user admin, a groups admin. Just curious, because I know Peter and yourself, you manage much bigger domains. Peter, how many users are on your domain?
5,000 to 6,000 in total.
And how many admins do you have on your domain?
Super admins, 4. So we keep it fairly minimal. So we don't want to be giving out too many power to too many staff. Yeah. We're quite accurate in terms of, or particular in terms of what rights we do give out to people.
Quite a lean team there.
That's it.
Good work. And Charlie, are all of your users on a singular domain, or your schools use separate domains?
So we're using a single domain,
yeah.
And that's because we have students that will transition from one school to another over time. So it's one large domain, and we find that works really well for us.
So approximately how many users do you have, and how many admins do you have running that?
Yeah, so in total with our staff, we've probably got about 28,000 users in total, and I actually only have 3 main super admin accounts, and then everybody else below that has granular admin accounts dedicated to their role.
It does show how powerful the Google security or the Google Admin Console is. If you can manage a domain with over 20,000 users with just 3 super admins.
Yeah,
impressive.
I mean the tools are fantastic, because they're developed with that cloud first approach, and everything just works seamlessly from that point of view. So they are best of breed.
Great, thank you. So back to, sorry to interrupt there. Back to 2-step verification.
Yeah, so I thought it would be useful just to consider what are the options, because we're talking about enabling this additional step in your authentication to verify the user, check it's the right person that's signing in. So if your credentials are compromised, you still have this next level of protection when someone tries to sign in with your account. Yeah, they might have your email. Yes, they might have your password, but they shouldn't have access to your verification method. And that gives you that additional layer of protection, which is why super admins absolutely need to have this in place. But it's interesting to talk through the various options, because some of them are more secure than others. And depending on the type of organization that you have, some of these you might want to rule out and prevent. So it's interesting. So the most secure are these security keys. So you can get a security key. You can buy them from Google. They have their own Titan security keys that you can get in the Google store. You can order those up. And they provide a physical security key that you can use to authenticate. So it's a physical device, plugs into your Chromebook, into your laptop, whatever. And there's USB-C types, and there's a USB-A and type as well that you can use. So they can be plugged in. But actually, the great thing is, for those who use Pixel phones, is that you get a Titan security key in your most recent Pixel phones. So yeah, Peter and I are sitting there going, "We've got them, we're sorted." So and I think it's a brilliant reason. Actually, it's a really good reason to get a Pixel phone, because you then have a Titan security key that's in there, communicates, authenticates with that nearby device I think that's a really useful. Peter, how have you found using that for authentication?
Yeah, it's great. It just works. Yeah, I've had a bunch of Pixel phones now, and yeah, that's definitely a really useful feature. Obviously, not everyone does have a Pixel phone, so for many of our staff, I've rolled out YubiKeys, which very similar to Titan keys. You can get them in various shapes and sizes with different USB connectors on, or you can get ones which have NFCs. You can even use that on your phone to sign in on there. And that's been another cost-effective way of rolling out two-step verification, because not everyone's comfortable in using their personal phone for that. Some people are, but not everyone has been. So that's been a good option for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think if you've got that physical security key, people can just use that and get started. Because that's the most secure option. But next, going through the list, you've then got the Google Authenticator app, or you can use other verification code generators as well. And this is the idea that when you sign in, you put in your password, and it says, what's the code on your app? Because the app generates a time-based code. You enroll your device typically using a QR code online, scan the QR code, and then you've got that authenticator app that's running, and then it gives you that authentication key that you just type in at the time of login. So that's pretty secure. It's specific to your device and specific to your setup. One of the things that folks ask me is, well, that's great until I change phone. Well, actually, there's a migration tool in the Google Authenticator app. I'm not sure about other ones, but it basically lets you scan a QR code to transfer your authentication from one phone to another really easily. So you don't have to go and rescan and reset things up. You can just migrate from one device to another really easily. So that Google Authenticator works really well. Trying to sign in. Have you come across that, Peter, when you've been signing in as well? How that works?
Oh, the phone pop-up. Yeah. So yeah, lots of staff use this. I use this on some of my non-super admin accounts, and yeah, it's a really fast, convenient way to log in and still make your account really secure. And I'd still argue that's a really secure way of doing it, because if your phone is using biometrics for authentication, or as long as it's got a PIN code or some sort of security on your phone, it's a really good way of making your account more secure, and it's really fast, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, speed is great for speed. Sorry,
yeah,
James,
I really like this. Yeah, I really like this method, especially for busy staff. You can roll this out, and it's so easy for people. Like you say, as long as they have security on the device, it's so easy for people to use. It makes the most sense. YubiKeys are fantastic, of course, but it's a device that they already have in their hand. It's already in their pocket, and they don't need to do anything else. They just pull out their device and tap yes to sign in. I think this is a really good one. I think this is the case where it's the security method that you already have with you. You don't need to do anything else. It's right there in your pocket. Personal favorite of mine.
Brilliant. So the next one we're going to go into is, well, you've got backup codes. Now, I do always recommend that go and grab your backup codes from your Google account settings, right? Because if you've got two-step authentication set up, your backup codes give you that kind of recovery option. Again, get your codes, put them somewhere safe. They won't expire. They have a time. It does say on them, when you look at your backup codes, it tells you how long ago you created them. So yeah, I don't worry, folks. I'm not sharing real backup codes here. These aren't my real backup codes. You're not going to get in anywhere.
The key here is, yeah, Charlie, they always say put them somewhere safe. But come on, in reality, where should people keep those? What do you think? Any recommendations on that?
So, I suppose it comes down to your own security, right? So if these are backup codes for super admin accounts, you could physically print them and store them in your organization's safe for backup, if that important. If they're for yourself, I would probably take a digital copy and store them in physical kind of backup storage that I would have. So I've got a NAS box, for example, I'd probably put them on the NAS box. I'd probably put them on a backup USB storage device as well, just in case I have some sort of complete failure. But you have to kind of consider, I mean, there's not much point taking a screenshot of your backup codes or text file of your backup codes and then putting it into the Google Drive with the account the backup codes are for, right? So you don't want to do that, right? Because people do that. You want to keep them somewhere offline, whether it's on a USB stick, whether it's on multiple devices a couple of times until you've got some sort of resilience. Any other ideas, Peter?
I use 1Pass and LastPass.
Yes, I was going to recommend those as well.
Yeah, and I put my backup codes in those, depending on which one I would be using.
Invisible ink. There's another one.
Which one is that, Peter?
No. My daughter's got an invisible ink pen. You know, one of the ones where you can write and then shine a light. maybe don't do that.
Take the UV light to Peter's walls and unlock all his accounts.
Oh dear. Yeah, so backup codes, put them somewhere safe. And there's some really good tips there from Peter and James. Apart from
each one's one use, isn't it, Charlie? You can only use a backup code once.
Yeah, that's right. So there's a single-use recovery codes. Yeah, single-use codes for recovery. And then the least secure one, of course, is, and sometimes a little bit of thought needs to go into this. Why is it least secure? So you can ask Google to send you an SMS message or even call your phone. So you can actually get a voice call that speaks your code to you. So why are these the least secure? Well, they're the least secure because they depend on somebody else's infrastructure. Calls can be intercepted. SMS messages can be intercepted. Numbers
can be spoofed as well, can't they? I've read about that happening. So, and it's also the least convenient option, isn't it? Having to wait for a text message to come through, then type in another number or wait for a call. It's far less convenient than using a security key or pressing the yes prompts on your mobile device.
Yeah, it's just, you're just kind of just waiting for something else to happen, right? And it's not got the convenience of the methods that we've looked at before in the first kind of three mobile or security key ones. So, and depending on your organization and the level of security that you have and the data you're processing, I kind of think you kind of want to try and steer clear of SMS and voice if you can. Now, there might be reasons why it's something you have to have as the last one that you use, perhaps. But certainly, I would recommend that folks probably stay clear of that if they've got any type of significant security concerns. Yeah. Okay, let's go on. So we've spoken about protecting your accounts and the steps you can put in place in terms of verification and giving yourself a kind of line of defense against bad actors. But actually, one of the key things that you can do is you can monitor what's happening with your accounts. Now, Peter, I know that you've been involved in setting up monitoring on the accounts that you've got. Maybe do you want to take us through, talk a little bit about that process and maybe the 2 points we've got here?
Sure, Charlie. Yeah. So the admin audit log records absolutely every admin change possible on the Google admin console. So that could be from creating a user, creating an activity rule. It could be doing a security investigation or changing an admin role. So you can use that audit log and you can filter it based on the type of action or the user, if you're interested in what a particular user has been doing. What I really recommend is setting up some automated alerts, because you're not going to be sat watching that log yourself all the time. So it's good to get a heads up when something changes. So a couple of the best ones I recommend setting up, firstly, changes to admin roles. So that could be a new user being assigned super admin status or being added to a role, or changes to those roles. So it's a really good idea to get a heads up if another super admin makes another super admin, and that super admin then makes another, it can go on. So it's good to get notifications of when something like that happens, or if a role changes. So what was previously a very locked down and granular role has some extra privileges added to it. It's just good to get heads up there. And also use that feature for other things like monitoring our use of a security investigation tool. So that's a feature available in Education Plus, and that is a very powerful feature that lets you look at emails or drive files in order to prevent things like phishing attacks or investigate issues on your domain. But of course, with really powerful tools, there is a chance that could be misused. So it's a good idea to just get a heads up of when those tools are being used, so you can track and audit it. You can get email alerts. You can add it into the security dashboard for you. So you can watch. You can get visibility of it in there. So yeah, do you use any activity alerts, Charlie or James?
The only activity alert we have, so we, as a Google reseller as well, and we resell Education Plus, we have a admin account for those licenses and orders and managing licenses for schools. So we have very, very tight security on that one. So the only alert we have is actually on that domain. Yep. So the secondary domain we have, that's events domain, is quite small. We only have about 10, 20 users on there. No active alerts on there. It's very easy just to go through the log. Actually, think back, Peter, we do have a few activity alerts on our training domain. So we have a training domain which we use, and we have a few different super admins in there. We have a couple of alerts there. But I'm sure Charlie has an encyclopedia of alerts ready to go.
I've got a few, but I think that Peter's already mentioned. I mean, that admin privileges one, changes to admin roles and privileges, absolutely need to monitor that, and changes to kind of key parts of the setup around apps. So if we have settings changing in our kind of workspace deployment, we can report on those. So really just general unexpected activities, because once your workspace domain, generally speaking, in my case, once you kind of got, because we've been running for probably 8 years now, once your domain is kind of set up, it's pretty much the setup is as you need it, with some very few changes thereafter. So when changes are made, we want to get sight of those, just in case we've got something that's happening that we're unaware of. So an admin making a particular change to maybe Drive or something that we're not sure of. So we've got some alerts for some of that. And yeah, occasionally what I find, and Peter's mentioned it already, the investigation tool for I suppose just investigating and reviewing exactly what activities going on, and it is a really powerful tool. And the admin audit log is fantastic for showing you what's happening or what's happened. And there are times when we go into the admin audit log often to investigate why some change that we've made has had an impact on a particular set of users, for example. So yeah, very much that monitoring thing with the getting alerts and finding out what's going on, really important.
I'm curious, so outside of the operational process of using the audit log, do either of your schools or domains, do you report the audit log to a security or leadership team?
So not the audit log, but what I do have in place that I do report with is a kind of bad word filter on email, which can generate some reports that I occasionally share with schools as well.
Yeah.
So we can look at, I suppose, inappropriate communication between young people, and we can report on that as necessary. So that's something that we do report on. We could actually run that through the investigation tool as well, but it's much easier to run it through the bad word filter and filter out. We filter out those messages, we stop their delivery, and we deliver them somewhere else so that we can review them and then catalog them and share them back to their source, you might say. Peter, what about you?
So I do a terminally security report to ISLT, so things in there feed into that report, but I wouldn't. Yeah, no one else really sees the full audit log. So there's a lot to understand as well, so it's good to just use it as a source of information and you break that down into another report.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, Peter. I might borrow that one. Terminally kind of security for it.
That's the important part, isn't it? To make them aware that there is a security log. They don't need to see every action, but the senior leadership is aware of that.
Just
need awareness.
Yep.
So we've kind of spent some time, I think, looking at the different security options and the controlling your account, controlling access to your accounts, monitoring accounts. Now, Google also have a more advanced protection program, and this is really targeted at super admins and delegated admin roles. So we're kind of talking about that main post, but there's also a whole range of other activities that are actually more likely to be subject to security attacks or the operations of bad actors in terms of their operations. So this advanced protection program gives you a workflow as administrator to work through, turning on a number of controls and enrolling those users in the program. And it is the kind of highest level of security option that you can get to protect your accounts. And it uses the kind of keys that we spoke about before, security keys, and you can control access to various third-party applications and such. But it gives you that maximum level of control and security for those particular accounts that are enrolled. And there is a workflow here. You can find out more information about it in the Google support pages, but it's a very clear workflow that users can go through, your organization, and then the users can go through to enroll in that program. So I haven't deployed this. I haven't deployed this as yet to my own users. I have the various multi-factor authentication and such already set up in place, but haven't deployed this actual enrollment program as yet. Peter, have you used any of this? Have you enrolled in this program per se?
Yeah, so some of our admin accounts are using this. I'd never recommend this for normal staff accounts because it's very, it's maximum security. It can be a bit restrictive, but it's a really good idea for super admin accounts. It enforces two-step verification. I think one of the really useful things it does is prevents any third-party apps which aren't trusted by Google from being added or accessing privileges on your account. So yeah, it's got some really good security kind of features in there. So yeah, I recommend turning it on.
Yeah, that's definitely on my things to do list. I need to get this one rolled out for my super admins. Yeah.
And as I look down this list and you see you've got political campaigns and celebrities and journalists, and people are probably thinking, oh, that wouldn't really apply to a regular school. There are a number of schools out there which do actually require a high level of security. So for example, there are embassy schools. So for example, perhaps just for example, US Embassy in India, they may have a school where they need to have a high level of security. You have schools in certain areas in the world which are run by oil and gas companies specifically for their employees' children. And in that case, they themselves, the company has a higher level of security, and therefore the school, which is underneath that, also has to have a higher level of security as well. So a number of scenarios where schools would require a much higher level of security.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is that, that heightened level that's really useful for folks. And so, yeah, it's one of those things to consider doing for your super admin accounts for sure. Okay. I think that's us moving on to any questions that we might have. We'll see if we've got anything coming through the comments or anything that comes to either of you guys as we go through this.
Okay, just pause to see if there are any questions from anybody. As we're waiting for a couple of questions, if you do have a question at all, please do drop it in the chat. Just whilst we're waiting for any questions, I want to sort of mention something that I know Charlie and Peter are working through at the moment. There's a new admin certification just coming out. Peter, I mean, I know you've both taken part of it. It's currently in beta. Maybe Peter, do you want to share a couple of details of that new process?
Yeah, so it's currently in beta. It's a new Chrome administrator exam. I think Charlie and I have both done the first stage of that now, which is essentially 100 multiple choice questions, all about managing Chromebooks and a few other things related to Chrome in the Google Admin Console. And I think the next stage, I've not done that part yet, but I think that is a more practical based part to the exam. So we're beta testers, aren't we, Charlie? So we're giving feedback about it, and yeah, it's interesting to be involved in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a good use of the time. I thought it was a good assessment to go through. So yeah,
I saw the first part was you were allotted 3 hours. How much time did you guys use?
I think I did. I definitely didn't take 3 hours. I think it was like an hour and a half. I spent an hour and 20, something like that.
Yeah, I was about the same, but I was only that because I kind of went through all the questions and then went back through the questions. Just so I went through them twice, you might say, and because my first run through it, I hadn't left any feedback on the questions, so I went back through it, adding occasional feedback on some of the questions, because that's what the team are looking for as you go through it.
Charlie didn't want to say he did it in 20 minutes. That's what he's saying. And there's a second component. Yeah, there's a second component, which is a lab component. So hands-on. It'd be very interesting to hear your feedback about that.
Yeah, it's good to see this come back, because there was one before, but it disappeared for a while. So it's good to see Google bringing this certification back, because Chromebooks are really popular. So it's good for admins to be able to list this certification, on their CVs and upskill themselves around Chrome. And
I'm very much looking forward to, of course, you know what I'm going to say, the training course that you gentlemen are going to prepare in the future as well. I think that'll be an awesome opportunity for administrators to look at. Okay, it looks like we don't have any questions. So I think, gentlemen, we can just finish off here. Obviously, if you're watching this live stream, you're already on our YouTube channel, but if you go to video.appsevents.com, you can see all of our previous summits, webinars, and tips and tricks videos. Charlie is very much present on the tips and tricks videos, and we have the awesome Bookie, Seti, doing our teacher-focused videos as well. Okay, I just wanted to point out a couple of upcoming summits in a couple of weeks. August 30th, we have a back to school summit, which is going to be very exciting. And then in September, so just over a month from now, we will have GAM tips for Google Classroom with Charlie and Peter again. So that'll be in September. Very much looking forward to that. A lot of people are always asking about GAM. They know how to get GAM installed, but then what's next? And some good resources out there, but I think that summit will be very, very interesting. Charlie and Peter, thank you very much for your time. And everybody who's been watching this or is watching this on replay, thanks very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure getting back in touch with Charlie and Peter after the summer holidays. And I wish everybody a wonderful start to their school years.